Friends, Jordan Montgomery here, and we're glad that you've tuned into another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. Before we jump into today's conversation, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Thompson & Co. Salon and Parlor. Thompson & Co. Salon and Parlor is a family-owned, stylist-owned community salon that fits the needs for all types of families. Located in downtown Iowa City and now a second location in Coralville, North Liberty area, TCO specializes in all things hair. In fact, that's where I've been getting my hair done for the last 7 years. TCO specializes in hair cutting, razor cutting, the most modern color techniques, and high-end hair extensions. As one of Iowa's only intercoiffure salons and Salon Today's top 200 salons in the U.S., TCO looks forward to being the salon of choice for you and those you love. Be sure to call or book on their website today at thompsonandcosalon.com. Thank you, TCO, for all you do for us and our community. Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. Especially excited about today's guest. Been looking forward to this interview for a while. We share a bunch of mutual friends in common. But the guy who connected us is my dear friend, Brad Lomenick. And sometimes we joke that this is like H3 squared podcast. If you don't know H3, Brad Lomenick's podcast, he tends to introduce us to a lot of our guests. Brad, God bless you. You're awesome. Thank you for connecting me to Mike and to so many other wonderful podcast guests that we host on the show. Many of you are familiar with Mike Foster. And if you're not, I want to tell you why you should be and tell you a little bit about my new friend, Mike, who I really admire. Mike's been featured on Good Morning America, Fox News, the New York Times. He's a best-selling author. He's a speaker. He's got a new book out, The 7 Primal Questions. We're going to dig into that today. He's a man of faith, married to his wife, Jennifer. He currently comes to us from Park City, Utah, although he is a resident of San Diego, California. And this guy has just this genuine, authentic, transparent energy that is so attractive. And brother, I think that's worked so well for you in your work. People are so drawn to your spirit and your energy and the way that you share and the way that you talk about personal development. I saw this. Somebody said about you that you are like the Mr. Rogers of personal development.
Yes.
And I kind of agree. And whether you like or don't like Mr. Rogers, you just have this sweet, endearing way about you that I think people feel drawn to. And I think that's who God made you to be. And I think you're using that part of who you are to create a lot of good in this world. Welcome to the show, Mike Foster. Thanks for being here.
Wow, Jordan, that's the best introduction I've ever had. You're so kind. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to you, just thank you, Brad, right? Thank you, Brad, for making this happen today.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Brad's a dear friend, speaker, author, and just a friend to many, but a friend for both of us. So, hey, can we just lean right in? Again, one of the things that works for you is, I think, your transparency and vulnerability in a world that seems to just grow increasingly inauthentic. You've managed to keep it real. Can I share a post on your social media with our audience to kick us off?
Sure, please.
So I want to do less talking and more listening, but our audience needs to hear this. This touched me. I heard this on a separate podcast that you were featured on. And when I heard it, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going there and our audience needs to hear this. And we're going to lean into our conversation today through this social media post. Mike Foster 2000, by the way, Instagram, go check him out. Great follow. You're one of my favorite follows, man, on social media. Just everything you post is like, wow, that hits me, that reaches me. Here he goes. Some thoughts on those who try. This is Mike Foster. Yesterday, I was forced to cancel my strongest couples workshop. Why? I had only one sign up. Only one. And frankly, I'm embarrassed. I promoted it. I invited lots of friends. Hundreds of people checked out the webpage. My wife and I had the food and special surprises all planned out. We were pumped, but still no one signed up. I feel embarrassed, irritated, and frustrated with myself. I'm second guessing my work and my message a bit. My confidence is rattled. This is what happens when things like this happen. I only share this because if you're a person who puts things out into the world, you probably have experienced this type of failure too. And when it happened, you wanted to hide it away so you wouldn't look bad or be embarrassed. For example, the book you published that didn't sell, the event you hosted that few came to, the dream business that closed 2 years later, the poem you wrote that no one understood, that sure thing investment that collapsed, your vulnerable IG post that went unnoticed. We're so good at looking successful, but hate having mud on our face. But failure is the sad cruelty of life. And honestly, we should share more of these moments and a little less of our highlights. Then we wouldn't feel so alone in our failure. If we didn't hide the things that didn't work, we would feel more connected. Sort of like we've joined a family of people who tried stuff and it just didn't work. And the fact that we tried makes us braver than those who didn't. Not better, but just braver. And friends, that's something to be proud of. So let's keep trying and then trying some more, because that's what success in life is all about. Bro, I read that and that just struck a chord with me. I thought, that's it, man. That is so well said. And I love that you're putting this stuff out into the world, an authentic, transparent message in a world that is so often inauthentic and lacks vulnerability. Can you tell me about what was going through your mind when you wrote that, why you decided to share it? And was there any did you have some nerves before you hit post or share on that one?
Oh, yes. Yes. Wrestled with it as I think anyone would wrestle with being vulnerable, kind of letting people into the inner sanctum of our life. And especially when that inner sanctum shows failure or weakness or disappointment or sadness or whatever the thing that we don't want people to see in our lives. And so I think it was like a Saturday morning. I literally just kind of, and I'm one of those guys, I don't pre-plan posts. I'm just kind of typing in the Instagram thing. It was probably the worst way to post things, but I'm just typing and just trying to be honest and get that place. And I do it for two reasons. Number one, I really believe it's the best way to live. When you are living in sort of this place of transparency and honesty, and I do want to say healthy transparency, healthy vulnerability, because I think we've all seen versions of like unhealthy vulnerability, unhealthy transparency. But I want to always be modeling healthy vulnerability. But then the second thing is, I really believe when I'm posting something or writing something, whether it's the book or social media or any content that I put out there, I want people to be encouraged. I want them to feel like hopefully lifted and more hope. And I don't think people necessarily feel more hope when they're hearing about how awesome I am or about all my wins. In fact, I think it's probably the exact opposite happens. When we share all of the highlight reels, I think a lot of times the people that are watching or following or listening or leaning in can sometimes feel discouraged because we're human beings and we instantly go to comparison. So when I actually believe when we share failure, pain, vulnerability, it brings connection, it brings closeness. And that's all I'm looking for is like, I want to do life with people in community. And the way to do that is through being a little bit more honest.
I've probably shared this quote like 10 times over the course of however many episodes on the Growth Over Goals podcast, but you sort of embody this quote. And the quote comes from Craig Rochelle. He said, "People can be impressed with your strengths, but they connect to you through your weaknesses."
Mm-hmm.
And I think you live that out. I think that's part of what works for you. You're like a younger, I say this with great respect to our mutual friend, Bob Goff, but you're a younger Bob. You've got this authentic, genuine energy about you. And you wrote a new book that sort of leans into this energy. And it's called The 7 Primal Questions. Take control of the hidden forces that drive you. This book helps people. You go deep. This is going to unlock. I'm excited to talk about this with you because we're going to unlock some things for some people today. And I've given you permission to go a bit deeper with me. We've talked about that offline. So Mike even might ask me some questions and lean in, and I've given Mike full permission to do that. But before we go there, Mike, why did you write this book, and why did you decide to write it at a time such as this?
Yeah. So to me, I actually just believe so much as you do, Jordan, in the possibility and potential of people and what they can be, and that I really believe most of us are in a really good story, but we're just not seeing it because we're getting hung up on a lot of past trauma and pain and things from our family of origin. And so really the book, The Seven Primal Questions, is helping people be clear on their hidden programming and the things that unfortunately drive their lives that aren't serving their lives very well. And so the book is really a culmination of 4 years of research, 6,000 hours of one-on-one interviews, 22 group labs, where I tried to take the complexity of our inner world and trauma and attachment theory and all those sorts of things that, just like human psychology in general can be very complicated. And I try to just boil it down into a simple framework and really a simple question that each person carries in their lives, which drives their marriage, drives their choices, drives their behaviors, drives their triggers, drives their relationships. It literally is the hidden programming and the operating system of you and me. And when we can identify what that question is that drives everything, we can then be empowered to take control of that question, because basically this is how it works. Early childhood, we get imprinted with a question. And usually it's out of trauma, pain, or confusion. And then as a child, we grow up, and as adults, we subconsciously ask this question over and over again in our daily lives. And we're not conscious of it, it's subconscious. And when we get a yes to our primal question, the answer yes, life is good. We're grounded, we're our best selves. But when we get a no to our primal question, we go into what I write about in the book. It's called the scramble. And the scramble is all the unhealthy and unhelpful things that we do in our lives to try to get the answer to our primal question back to a yes. So it could be people pleasing, overworking, codependency. It could be hyper control and hypervigilance. All of these sort of behaviors and things that we do to try to get the answer to our primal question back to a yes. And really, the research shows that almost everything we do in our day is attached to this one question. But it's not a problem. It's not something where you're now less than or flawed because you have a primal question. It's really giving people the opportunity to say, okay, how do I take control of it? But within the primal question is also what I write about, this primal gift, this relational superpower that you have. So let me give you an example. So my primal question is, am I safe? And that's because I grew up, I have abuse in my early childhood. And so that idea of safety, protection, those concepts and themes were very powerful in my life at an early age, and feeling really out of control and getting a lot of no's to that question, am I safe? And so now I carry that question in my adult life, and I, have this high emotional need for safety. Okay. And it's crafted how I do my work. It's impacted my marriage. You want to see the worst version of Mike Foster? Well, answer his primal question, am I safe, with a no. Then I go into, I'm hyper vigilant, I'm hyper controlling, I can tend to isolate and withdraw to protect myself. All of these things are behaviors and choices that I make because my primal question got answered with a no. But here's the superpower part. And this is the thing that I really always want to focus on in the book, is that we take our primal question. I take my primal question, and mine's question one. There are 7 different questions, and each of us has a different question. I take my question, am I safe, Jordan? And I put it over you. Okay. And I assume that you're asking the same question that I am I safe? And so everything that I do with you relationally is trying to answer that question, yes, for you. Okay. Even though that's may not be your primal question. Okay. So the reason why people tell me stuff all the time, like I'm an executive counselor, people have done this my entire life. They tell me all their gory details within like minutes of knowing me. So just be pre-warned, Jordan, when we start talking about your story. Okay. But but the reason they do that is because they feel safe and protected in my presence. The way I talk, the way I'm actually not even sure what I'm doing. I just know that I have a PhD in safety because of the pain and trauma of my story. And so I've become an expert in that. And I want to look for ways to deploy that. So, like a lot of times in my work, I come into like businesses and organizations where there's conflict, and I can sit with teams that are in conflict or executives who are in conflict and be an unbiased, protected place for them to have dangerous conversations. Okay. I'm awesome at that. And I don't say that lightly, but I'm proud of the fact that the pain of my past is actually serving this really powerful purpose now. So let's talk about your question. And
Mm.
this is where I like to have fun, because now we're going to do a little therapy with Jordan. So
This is great.
you identified your primal question as question 4. Am I
Mm.
wanted? Tell me a little bit about that. How that primal question sits in your subconscious. And when you get a yes, you feel really good. But when you get a no, you go into your scramble. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, similarly, I have pain in my past that has, in so many ways, allowed this to be my primal question. And before I even go further on that point, what you write about and talk about, Mike, in terms of the superpower, like for me, that plays out in helping people to feel included and invited and
Yes.
welcomed. Like I've always had a heart for people who are on the periphery, like really want them to be included in things. But it's born out of a place of pain and feeling
That's right.
rejected. And I say this with great love in my heart for my mom. And there's been a lot of reconciliation. I've never talked about this on our podcast. In fact, there might be many people who don't know this part of our story, but my mom and dad had a divorce when I was young, and I was actually in high school when they split, got formally divorced. But throughout my childhood, and neither one of my parents is perfect. Nobody has perfect parents. Um, my mom lived sort of a double life, so there was that was part of my story. Is I found this out that she was unfaithful to my dad, lived a double life, and finding that out at high school age, I was about 16 when all that came out. I started to think about all the ways in which I had been rejected or she had chosen this other person over me.
Mhm.
And I have specific moments, Mike, where I go back to that. It's like, man, I remember that game that she didn't come to because she was doing this other thing with this other person who was really supposed to be my dad, but wasn't my dad. And that that pain runs pretty deep. I didn't even know that "Am I Wanted" was my question until your book came along. But also, I was sharing with you offline. My wife and I are doing some marriage coaching, and in our marriage coaching work with this amazing couple, Jill and Mark Savage, they started to press on that part of my past. Like, hey, do you think there's
Mhm.
any themes there? Anything that you learned? Anything that you're still wrestling with or dealing with as a result of that past? And no, there's reconciliation with my mom, and it's all good. And then it was Jill who brought it up. She said, I think you're still dealing with some rejection from your past. And then you have this Instagram post, and it's like, hey, do you deal with rejection? And again, the old me would have said, no, not at all.
Mhm.
But the new me knows that, yeah, that's been part of my story. And I do deal with that. And it's led me to this primal question of, am I wanted? And it does probably drive how I do most everything. And I'm also then projecting that question upon other people and assuming that it's their question too. And it's in many ways been a driver for how I think, operate, and communicate. So this is fascinating. So anyway, that's maybe a longer answer to a pretty short question, but that's sort of the backstory leading into Am I Wanted?
I love that. Well, I think you're demonstrating, and I actually am the receivership of your primal gift, of your primal question of am I wanted? Because we probably talked for 5 or 6 minutes before, maybe 10 minutes before we actually started recording, and I instantly felt uh, like you were my best friend,
Hmm.
like connected to you, welcomed, like I was, and these things get, we're just meeting each other, right? But you really do have this relational superpower to bring people in. Q4s make great leaders because they just have this power to convene people and people follow them.
Mm,
Q4 is Bob Goff, our mutual friend Bob Goff. He's a Q4.
mm.
Bob Goff is the only person that I know who put his cell phone number in the back of his book. And the reason why Bob does that is because he's a Q4, because every time somebody calls that number, they answer Bob's primal question of, am I wanted, with a yes. Okay. But it's also Bob putting his primal question over everybody else and saying, I want you to feel like you're a friend of mine. Like, again, we only give our cell phone numbers to people that are in our kind of inner circle,
Yes.
or we trust with our cell phone
Yes.
numbers. But Bob's saying to everybody, over 1 million people, because he sold like over 1 million copies of that book, I'm your friend and call me anytime. That's such a powerful, powerful thing. And so one of the things I talk about in the book is like, know that the need for Jordan to belong and be connected is an important part of you. It's what I would call your apex emotional need. And when you're having that need met, Jordan, you're the best. You're your best self. Okay.
Mm.
You also have this really incredible gift of making others feel included. You also need to understand that when you get rejected or feel rejected, that's going to send you into your scramble. And so another concept I write about in this book is like living not in our primal question, but living in our primal truth. It's where we take our question and we turn it into a statement. So for me, it's taking the primal question, am I safe? And turning it into my primal truth, I am safe. And Jordan taking his primal question of, am I wanted? And turning it into his primal truth statement of, I am wanted. And so when we live our lives from not allowing others to answer yes or no to our question, and we sort of self-answering it, saying, I know I'm wanted. You may reject me. And yes, Jordan, there will be people that reject you and reject parts of you, but you have a whole host of people who want you. And not only do they want you, but you want you. Okay.
Mm,
That's even the deeper work of that question
it's
is,
good.
I want me. So when we live in that place, it's like very powerful. And it almost gives us immunity. It gives you immunity to the rejection. It gives you this power to actually live out this belonging and inclusion and leader and convening in a really profound way. Same with me. See, if I'm not feeling safe, guess what? I don't do very well. Make others feel safe. Okay.
Yeah.
So I need to show up when I'm counseling people and we're having these dangerous conversations. I can't be wondering about my own safety. I have to show up in my primal truth and go, I am safe. One of the things I write about in the book is that because there was abuse in my early childhood, I actually have to remind myself as an adult that I'm now an adult. Okay. That I'm not this powerless little kid who can't protect himself. I'm now 6'4", 210 pounds, and I'm an adult. I have a voice, and I have resources. I have friends. I can take control of my own safety, not through hypervigilance or anxiety or control or anything sort of like unhealthy or people pleasing or all the tools I went to when I was wrapped up in my question. But when I'm living in my primal truth, I can remind myself that I live in a suburb of San Diego. Okay. I'm safe. All right. Um, you know, I'm not in danger. And that just is the a night and day difference when we're living in our primal truth versus living within the question.
So good. I have so many questions and not enough time. But so let me ask you this question. And you write about this in the book to some degree. But what do you do with somebody who doesn't know, or like you're trying to identify the question? But because I look at this and I go, well, maybe there's more than one question. So what do you how do you respond to that, Mike? And this will be good. So note taking time.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'd encourage your listeners, if you want to sort of begin the process of understanding your primal question, I have a free assessment at primalquestion.com or mikefoster.tv. You can go take the free assessment so you can understand yours. But let's say you want to know your spouse's primal question. because that'd be helpful, okay, to
Yeah.
know how to answer yes, or maybe the things that you're doing unintentionally to answer it with a no. Or maybe you're on a team and you want to be a better leader with them. We want to understand not only our question, but we want to understand other people's question, because it's an opportunity for us to have healthy relationship with that person and stop doing things that answer their primal question with a no. For example, Jordan, I would never, like, let's say you and I are working on a team together and we're in an office together. And let's say I'm your boss. I would never not invite you to every single function that we're doing as a company. Okay. Because for me to, like, even if it's just some small thing like, hey, the boys are going to go out and get some apps and watch some football tonight. You watch Monday Night Football. And for me to leave you out of that invitation with a question for am I wanted would be a very hurtful thing for me to do. So I, as an employer, as a boss, I can attune to that need and go, okay, I want to make sure that I'm inviting Jordan. Or let's say, Jordan, you're my boss, okay? And you know that my primal question is, am I safe? You're never going to call me like on a Wednesday and leave a voicemail, say, hey, Mike, emergency meeting on Friday, be there at 9 o'clock sharp. Hang up, okay? Because where do I go in my head? I'm getting fired. There's something horribly wrong. This is my last day. I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. And, I got to protect myself. I go into my scramble. But if you were a good boss and you knew my question was question one, you'd say, hey, Mike, emergency meeting on Friday, be there sharp at 9 o'clock. I totally forgot Sarah's birthday and we got to plan an emergency birthday party for her that afternoon. And I need your help with it. Click. Okay. All of a sudden, I'm no longer going to my scramble, okay, because you as a boss knew my question and you are attuning to that. You're communicating to me through my question. I tell leaders this all the time, and I know this is a leadership podcast. I say, no one is going to buy into your vision or really follow you as a leader, like go all in with you, unless you are first answering their primal question with a yes.
So good.
So I want to know my wife's primal question. I want to know my employees' primal questions. I want to know anybody that I'm involved with. I want to know it so I can attune to it and bring the best out of them, and also reduce any sort of conflict or resistance or inefficiency. Like, if I'm always feeling unsafe, and Jordan, you're my boss, and I'm always feeling unsafe around you because you're accidentally answering my primal question with a no, because you're not being very clear in your communication. And I like clear communication because that helps me feel safe. I'm going to be managing that as your employee. Okay. I'm not going to be bringing my best to your company. But if you can be strategic and make me feel safe, I'm all in with you. Okay. I'm getting yeses. So this is where the tool and the model can be so powerful in our marriages, in our workplaces, in our friendships, and then obviously in our own personal development.
So I'm imagining you working with a team, because this is brilliant and it's vetted through a lot of research. I mean, the way that you write about this and speak about this, you're doing it with a level of depth. This isn't like some good sounding idea, right? Like
it's not an Instagram post on Saturday morning.
Right. There's deep layers of research. I mean, you just have a brilliant mind and you've gone deep in this subject matter. I'm imagining you working with a team. When is it appropriate to say to somebody, or how should we say to somebody, hey, this is my primal question, and here's why it matters? Like, from one to another on a team, from employee to employer, from employer to employee, like, how do you recommend people, outside of, hey, take the assessment, read the book, hire Mike Foster, like, how do you recommend people go about communicating their primal question to one another and doing this in the context of team?
Yeah. So one of the things you could put this sort of in the category of strengths finder assessment. You could put it in the category of the Enneagram, the 5 love languages, understanding what your love language is. It's just a tool to help you understand yourself and understand others. And sometimes what I suggest in terms of perhaps, because this is vulnerability, right? There's a part of this that feels vulnerable. We're revealing really some of the deeper emotional needs that we have as human beings. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of sacred territory. You sharing about kind of your early childhood experiences, that's real vulnerability. So another way that I sometimes suggest people enter into the conversation is not so much in terms of the vulnerability of the question or the imprint or how it got started, but through the primal gift. See, if you can be clear and have a conversation, like, okay, like one of the questions is, am I loved? Okay. Well, I want all my am I loved people because they're going to make everybody around them feel loved and seen and known, and they're great listeners and they're empathy experts. Okay, so they are fantastic at loving people. That's a primal gift that I want to use and talk about use in my organization. How do I best use that person? Well, I'm going to use that person with my customers. Okay. I want every customer to be connected to Sarah because
Yes.
she is going to make them feel loved. Okay. I also want them to connect in with Jordan because Jordan's going to make them feel connected. Okay.
Mm.
But then at question 5, am I successful? If I know somebody's primal question is, am I successful? And then we talk about their primal gift, making other people successful. They're great coaches. They're great strategists. They know how to win. Okay. They're incredibly competitive. Well, I can take that primal gift in my organization and go, oh, Steve's successful. We need to put him on our biggest problems in this company. Okay. Because he's going to know how to figure that stuff out. All right. So it's this really beautiful way of not necessarily like vulnerability and starting with the question, certainly, and some teams are able to do that. Okay. But maybe we can start the conversation with our primal gifts and how could those be best deployed in the team, and how do we use the resources of people like you. If you have conflict in your organization, like I'm on your team, bring Mike in, have Mike sit down with Jenny and Sarah, who are yelling at each other and don't like each other right now and causing a lot of friction in the organization. Have them sit down with Mike because I'm your guy for safety.
So good. So good. So it's more about focusing on the superpower than it is the pain. It's the gift, not necessarily the question. And I think that's such a healthy, positive way to approach this subject matter. Where do they go? Can you say it one more time? The assessment. We're going to add this to the show notes. So if you're driving down the road right now and you're like, I don't have time to write it down, all good. And then we're going to recommend that you go to Amazon, order the book. It's a best-selling book for good reason. We'll add a link to so you can order the book as well. But where do people go to get the assessment? One more time, Mike.
Yeah, just primalquestion.com. Free assessment takes about 5 minutes. There's about 20 questions, and it will produce your question and give you. And then there's this little video that comes after, and I'll kind of unpack that with you and some of the implications and things to kind of coach you around in terms of that. And so, yeah, it's really easy, really fun. We've had thousands and thousands of people taking the assessment. The book's only been out for a few months. And again, if you want to improve your marriage, you want to improve your leadership, you want to level up in your own personal development, you've got to understand the hidden programming. And the Primal Question is going to help you do that.
And how do they go about working with you directly? Because there's some people listening who want to dial in, tap into Mike Foster more directly beyond assessment, book, following you on social media. How does someone go about tapping into Mike Foster and getting in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best way to get in touch with me is through my personal website, mikefoster.tv. There's a contact form on there, and I always I like to think of myself as pretty accessible. So yeah, there's a contact form there, and would love to connect at whatever level. I mean, I'm here to help people, Jordan, and help sometimes looks like, executive coaching. Sometimes it's workshopping. Sometimes it's speaking. Sometimes it's a half day thing. So if I can be helpful to people, I'm all for it. So, but yeah, mikefoster.tv is probably the best way to get in contact with me. Primalquestion.com for the assessment.
Well, you've already been so helpful to me just on this podcast, but before that, via social media, I mean, I think you are one of the best follows. Mike Foster 2000, right? Instagram. And again,
yeah, because there was 1,999 other Mike Fosters on Instagram.
It all makes sense now. I get it.
Yes.
But again, man, you are offering hope and you're helping people feel connected. I love what you shared. That's one of the most powerful things that's been shared on this podcast is that when you share the pain or the weakness or some of the things that aren't so fun to talk about, it helps people feel connected. And
Mm-hmm.
for so many of us, we're guilty. I'm guilty sometimes of wanting to show the highlight reel or the good stuff, and we all could use some help in that arena. And hey, what makes people feel more connected? How could I, as a leader, draw more people in? I want to land with some leadership questions. Can we do that? We've talked about,
That's it.
how this
Yes.
affects leaders. Where do you see leaders have some blind spots and understanding one another? I mean, I think the reality is we all have blind spots. I certainly have them. Where do you see leaders falling short in understanding their people? And how might you even recommend, as a leader, we go about using some of the primal questions to help us with the blind spots?
Yeah. Well, I tell leaders all the time, the most important project that they'll lead this year is themselves. Okay. And so I think if you want to be a great leader, you want to have healthy teams, you want to have great work culture, you actually just want to crush it with the bottom line and revenue and sales, you got to lead yourself well. And I think a lot of leaders sort of compartmentalize their life, and they think they just have to like do well in this one little area, and then everything else will work out just fine. Like we are so integrated, and we are so we need to think more holistically about what we're bringing to work, what we're bringing to what kind of person are we bringing to this team meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning. Are we bringing an insecure person? Are we bringing an angry person?
Yeah.
Are we bringing, just a person who doesn't understand themselves and understands their needs? And so I think, the challenge for any leader is to know thyself. I always like to say, when I do kind of the deep digging of like what's happening inside of Mike Foster's heart, understanding his primal question, understanding sort of how trauma and triggers and all that plays a part. Like when I'm on to me, man, basically whatever I touch is going to be awesome and win and be healthy. But when I suck and I'm like in my scramble and I am just like, an angry, confused, hyper vigilant, feeling unsafe guy, and I'm showing up like that as a leader, the results are not good, Jordan. But a lot of us, we make the mistake. We think, well, I'll just be a really good business guy. I'll be a really good leader. And that's all I have to be. And you're wrong.
Really well said. You're hitting me like in all kinds of places right now. Talk to us about, because you're so intuitive, and I got to imagine that there's some generational differences. Like we have some veteran leaders listening to this, some emerging leaders listening to this. Talk to us about where veteran leaders need to be more vigilant and how all of this impacts their emerging leaders. And then where does the emerging leader need to be more vigilant about how this impacts veteran leaders? Can you talk about that?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, when you start talking about emotional health or emotional fitness, a lot of the areas that I talk about and write about and try to help people with, it's very easy to dismiss that stuff in terms of leadership and saying, because that doesn't have an impact on the bottom line. But I work with a lot of very large companies, and I believe the reason why they have me on staff and on retainer with them is because I do impact their bottom line. Okay, I help their best employees and top performers not burn out. Okay, I help. I know what it costs to replace a high performer on a team. Not cheap. Okay. I actually work with a headhunting firm and provide all their wellness support. I know how much it costs to hire like C-suite and really good employees these days. Okay, it's not inexpensive, and so maybe in the older generation, you look at sort of things in the softer goods of emotional health, emotional fitness, emotions in general. And you think like, oh, that doesn't impact. That's not our product. That doesn't really impact our business. We're about the numbers and the spreadsheets, and you're just missing an opportunity to actually bring a lot of efficiency, opportunity, and improve the bottom line by addressing some of these things. Now, the younger generation, one of the things that the younger generation sometimes miss is they think that everything's about their emotions. Okay. Everything's about how they feel today. And they forget that there's an agreement and a commitment that, of an expectation from an employer. Okay. I think our emotions are important, but I am not controlled by my emotions. I'm still the CEO of my life, and I can still make good decisions for my life, even if I'm sad, even if I'm depressed. And again, I don't minimize those emotions. Those are very important emotions, but I'm responsible for those emotions, not my boss. Okay, not my spouse, not some external force. I have to take ownership of that. You mentioned a lot of people refer to me as Mr. Rogers, and yes, I fully embrace that. But there's also a Navy SEAL part of me that says this radical ownership is the only way for us to actually grow and have that growth. I mean, this is what this podcast is about. How do we grow? Okay. And we grow by taking ownership and not sort of I'm feeling, I'm not feeling like working today. Okay. That's great. And I understand that. But you know what you're missing is that part in you that's actually really resilient and strong and powerful. And you need to bring that part of yourself to work today, because we need your contribution.
So good, man. You have so much wisdom. Lot to unpack. And again, I think you've just dedicated yourself to this work. And then I think you've put it on full display, and you've managed to talk about what you've learned in just this really real, authentic, and practical way. What's next for Mike Foster? What are you working on next? Like, where do you give us a window into that?
Yeah. Well, to me, the book just being out is, I really see this first book as the platform and the model. And I think the next parts for me is really building out how the model plays out in these different domains of our lives. For example, I think I'm going to do probably a leadership book about how to use the primal question in leadership to lead healthier, stronger teams, how to be a better leader in general, create powerful, thriving work cultures by understanding how the question plays out. I want to do probably a marriage book. And this tool, I do a lot of couples counseling. This tool in marriage, like Jordan, you got to understand. What's your wife's name again? I want to say Ashley. Is that right?
You got it. You nailed it.
Okay, I got it. All right, I remember. Ashley, you want to know Ashley's primal question, because as a couple, if you are really good at answering Ashley's primal question with a yes, and she's really good at answering your primal question with a yes, you will be a success in your relationship. Most relationships fail not because of money or sex or stress or kids or all those things, though those things are important things. They fail because the spouse continually and consistently answers their spouse's primal question with a no or a maybe. That's why it fails. So if we could get really good in our marriages, our committed relationships, about saying yes to our spouse's question, we're going to win, and we're going to be long term.
Bro, I'm going to hold you to that. You got to write a leadership book and a marriage book. This is so good. And by the way, this is deeper and more specific in many ways, I believe, than the love language book or Strength Finders. Like this is for me, it forces me to reflect. And I think for all of us, and you know this better than anybody with the work that you do, is like, man, so much of who we are today is a result of things that we've been through in the past. And I think this allows us to tap into that in deeper and more important ways to understand other people than, say, the love language assessment. Nothing wrong with that. We've gone through that too in our marriage coaching. But I love the layers that we unpack in the 7 primal questions. And I love the way that you've helped me unpack some things even in today's conversation. It's probably one of the few conversations where I've ever like in a live way on a podcast, like went through like some counseling. I've never done that before. I'm like looking at John, our producer, like, I think this is okay. It was more than okay. It was awesome. But I appreciate
that's my primal question at play. You just got you
made me feel safe. Yeah, man.
I made you feel safe, and you opened up.
Yeah, and this doesn't happen. I'm like, it's so uncomfortable. Our life's work is asking questions, right, in our coaching business. And then, as a podcaster, like, say less, listen more, ask more questions. And so, like, it's so awkward for me to talk or to share for long periods of time. And you helped me to do some of that today. I hope I hope for our listeners, it was worth listening to.
Oh, it was awesome.
And
Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you
yeah,
for your
man.
openness.
And thank you for your work and your spirit and the good stuff that you're putting out into the world. We started with that Instagram post. I think that's one of the most powerful things I've seen on Instagram in a long time, or on any social media platform in a long time. And you made me feel connected. In our mastermind group this morning, I shared that with 100 people, that exact post. I read it verbatim. I said, okay, I'm interviewing Mike Foster later today. Some of you know Mike Foster, some of you don't. Let me paint a picture. Uber successful guy leading workshops and speaking all over the country and working with these large companies. And I got to read you this post. And I read it, and it was like, we're on Zoom, so I'm not with people to like fist pound and hug them. But it was like this collective, sort of group Zoom hug. Like everybody was like 2 thumbs up, like the facial expressions, like, man, I feel that. And that gives me hope, and that makes me feel connected. And isn't it backwards that all you did was talk about something that you planned that didn't go well in a really real way? And somebody's thinking, well, if Mike Foster can feel that way, then maybe it's okay for me to feel that way sometimes too. Bro, you're a light in this world. I appreciate who you are. Anything that you want to leave our audience with before we sign off?
No, I think, just thank you, Jordan. Thank you for being you. Thank you for bringing your primal question to all of us, letting us all belong. And again, it does not surprise me that you're on a group call leading 100 people this morning. It does not surprise me that the thing that you get most excited about is connectiveness, okay, as a Q4. And so I guess my final words is like, friends, let's just like lean into who we are, lean into our stories, embrace them for what they are, and see how we mine the gold from it. And that's what I'm trying to do in my own life. And I know, Jordan, you're doing that. And we'll just kind of figure it out as we go along.
So good. Well, thank you for your investment of time, energy. You're a really busy guy, and I want to honor your time. And we're going to stay connected, I think, for a long time to come, man. God bless Brad Lomenick for putting this together.
Yes.
And God bless you.
We love our Brad.
We love Brad. We love Brad. And now I can also say I love Mike Foster. You're the real deal, man. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Jordan. It's been a pleasure.
This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being here. If you found any value in this episode, I would love it if you would rate, review, subscribe to this podcast in an effort that we might move our mission of impact forward. I also want to say thank you to our producers, John Choate and James Roth of Storyline Multimedia, for all of the work that they do behind the scenes to make this podcast go. Be well, be great. Have a wonderful day.